Beyond the headlines, the brutal truth about Black women in corporate America. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I want to begin by acknowledging the profound wisdom that shaped this talk. Recently, I had the privilege of interviewing Remona Hazel, a visionary force whose work has fundamentally transformed how we understand representation and power in corporate America. Ramona isn't just a thought leader, she's a truth teller who has dedicated her life to creating pathways for Black women in leadership while unflinchingly challenging the comfortable narratives we tell ourselves about progress. Her courage to speak truth to power has opened doors for countless women who might otherwise have remained invisible in spaces that weren't designed for them. Today, I'm honored to share the wisdom she imparted during our profound conversation. Wisdom that I believe has the power to transform how we all think about equity and inclusion. We live in a time of headlines, headlines that celebrate record numbers and historic firsts, headlines that tell us we're making progress. And in many ways, we are. But beneath these celebratory headlines lies a more complex reality, one that Ramona illuminate with remarkable clarity. Here's a headline you might have seen recently. Women CEOs reach record numbers in Fortune 500 companies. 55 women now lead these corporations, the highest number in history. This is, without question, worth acknowledging. But when we look closer, as Ramona encouraged me to do, we discover something troubling. Of those 55 women CEOs, only two are Black women, the Sunda Brown Duckett at TIAA and Tony Towns Whitley at Science Applications International Corp. Two out of 500 companies. Let that sink in for a moment. Not 20, not 10, two. This is the illusion of progress, the dangerous assumption that advancement for some automatically means advancement for all. It doesn't. And this disconnect between perception and reality is what I want to explore with you today. The truth is, progress for women in general does not automatically translate to progress for Black women specifically. The barriers Black women face aren't simply gender barriers with a racial component added on. They are unique intersectional challenges that require specific intentional solutions. As Ramona explained during our interview, representation matters, profoundly so. But real equity requires intentional action beyond surface level gains. While more women are breaking into C suites, systemic obstacles continue to keep Black professionals from advancing at the same rate as their peers. The pipeline isn't just leaking. For many Black women, it was never fully constructed in the first place. Consider the Sunda Brown Duckett's journey. When she became CEO of TIA in 2021, she entered a finance industry historically lacking diversity at senior levels. She faced not only the pressure of leading a major financial institution, but also the added weight of representation. Knowing her performance would be scrutinized through multiple lenses, knowing that her success or failure would impact opportunities for countless other Black women. What makes Duckett's leadership particularly powerful is her approach. She didn't just accept the role and focus solely on financial metrics. She prioritized building internal talent development pipelines specifically focused on mentorship for underrepresented groups. She advocated publicly for inclusion both inside her company and across her industry. Under her leadership, TIAA saw measurable improvements in employee engagement scores among minority staffers, and her advocacy elevated conversations about authentic representation beyond just numbers. Before joining TIA, Duckett served as CEO of Chase Consumer Banking, where she championed financial literacy initiatives targeting underserved communities. Her leadership has inspired other organizations to re examine their succession planning practices with an eye toward truly inclusive advancement. This is what meaningful progress looks like, not just breaking through glass ceilings, but reinforcing the ladder for others to follow. But even as we celebrate these individual triumphs, we must confront a disturbing trend that Ramona highlighted in our conversation. The economic landscape is impacting Black communities, and especially Black women, more acutely than ever before. Recent Bureau of Labor Statistics data shows that in April 2025 alone, Black women lost over 106,000 jobs, the largest drop among any demographic group amid rollbacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts and shifting workplace cultures. 106,000 jobs in a single month. This wasn't random economic fluctuation. Black professional women's employment was disproportionately affected by corporate cutbacks on diversity programs coupled with broader economic shifts. This trend followed several years where DEI initiatives had begun opening doors but proved vulnerable when organizations retrenched during market uncertainty. The crisis sparked renewed urgency around sustaining, not just launching inclusion programs so gains aren't easily reversed. It also highlighted how quickly hard won advances can be erased without vigilance. What looks like progress can be startlingly fragile when it isn't anchored in structural change. This is the reality many Black women face in corporate America, a reality where even after breaking through barriers, the ground beneath their feet remains unsteady, a reality where they must constantly prove their worth while navigating both subtle and overt biases, a reality where they are often the first to be let go when companies decide diversity is a luxury they can no longer afford. But here's where Ramona's insights become particularly powerful. Despite these challenges, or perhaps because of them, we're seeing remarkable resilience and innovation within the Black community. By mid 2024 into early 2025, reports showed that approximately 14% of all U.S. businesses owned by women were led by those identifying as Black or African American, making them the fastest growing segment among new entrepreneurs. This isn't happening by accident. Facing barriers in traditional employment, many Black women are creating their own paths, but they still face significant challenges. Accessing startup capital remains harder compared to white counterparts due largely to historic wealth gaps, plus ongoing bias within lending institutions. In response, Black businesswomen have increasingly turned toward digital platforms, which lower traditional barriers to entry and formed collaborative networks, sharing expertise and resources outside mainstream channels. These entrepreneurs have shown notable increases year over year in revenue generation, alongside greater visibility through national pitch competitions and grants targeted specifically toward minority founders. Uh, Many started their ventures after encountering glass ceilings or outright layoffs in corporate America, demonstrating remarkable adaptability amid adversity. Their success stories provide blueprints others can follow and put pressure on larger firms and funders alike toward more equitable practices industry wide. This is what Ramona calls creating our own tables rather than waiting for seats at existing ones. It's a powerful form of agency and self determination. But, and this is crucial, it shouldn't be the only path available. Black women shouldn't have to become entrepreneurs simply because corporate America fails to value their contributions. So, where does this leave us? With a complicated truth, we are making progress, but that progress is uneven, fragile, and insufficient. The headlines celebrating diversity often mask persistent inequities. The systems that produce these inequities remain largely intact, even as individual exceptions are celebrated. As Ramona emphasized in our conversation, we need to move beyond what she calls performative diversity, the kind that generates good press releases but doesn't fundamentally alter power structures. We need to examine who truly holds decision making authority in our organizations. Who controls budgets? Who determines strategy? Who decides who gets hired, fired, promoted, or developed? True progress isn't just about who's in the room, it's about who has the power to shape what happens in that room. It's about creating environments where Black women can bring their full, authentic selves to work without having to code switch or downplay their identities. It's about recognizing that diversity without inclusion is merely tokenism, and inclusion without equity is merely optics. Ramona shared something profound that I can't stop thinking about. She said, the most dangerous illusion is believing we've arrived when we've barely begun the journey. This is the heart of what I want to leave you with today. We haven't arrived. The journey toward true equity is ongoing, complex, and often uncomfortable. It requires more than good intentions. It demands sustained action, accountability, and a willingness to examine and dismantle systems that perpetuate inequality, even when those systems benefit us personally. For those of us who identify as Black women, Ramona's message is one of both validation and empowerment. Your experiences are real. The barriers you face aren't imaginary. The extra work you do, the code switching, the careful navigation of stereotypes, the emotional labor is substantial. And you deserve workplaces that recognize your full humanity and value your contributions without requiring you to diminish yourself. For allies and organizations, the message is equally clear. Performative diversity isn't enough. Hiring a few Black women isn't enough if they're not supported, developed, promoted, and given real authority. Celebrating Black History Month isn't enough if you're not addressing pay inequities, promotion disparities, and cultural issues the other 11 months of the year. I want to end with a challenge, a call to action for every person in this room. What if we stopped celebrating the exceptions and started demanding the rule? What if we refused to accept the narrative that two Black women CEOs in the Fortune 500 represents progress? What if we held organizations accountable not just for who they hire, but for who they promote, who they pay equitably, who they truly empower? The revolution we need isn't just about representation, it's about redistribution, redistribution of power, of opportunity, of resources. It's about creating systems where Black women don't have to be exceptional to succeed. They just have to be good at their jobs, just like everyone else. So I ask you, what power do you hold and how will you use it? If you're a leader, then how will you ensure that your organization's commitment to diversity isn't the first thing sacrificed when budgets tighten? If you're a colleague, how will you speak up when you witness the subtle biases that undermine Black women's contributions? If you're an investor, how will you direct capital toward Black women entrepreneurs who have been systematically denied access? The time for celebrating incremental progress is over. The time for fundamental transformation is now. And that transformation begins with each of us refusing to accept the illusion of progress and instead demanding the reality of power. Thank you.